Welcome to SAB's Racial Equity Town Hall.
Yeah, we can go ahead and kick this thing off. So, hello everyone, welcome to the Racial Equity Town Hall. So we can start by giving introductions. I will be facilitating today the panel and serving as the moderator for the Student Activities Board, which is entrusted with promoting, regulating, and registering student organizations. So we ask that everyone during this event keep your videos off and your mics muted, just to be respectful for our panelists as they're talking. We'll have a chance to turn your video on and speak towards the end of the town hall during the Q&A feedback section for the last 15 minutes. So you can drop any questions you have in the chat box and we'll get to them. So after the Q&A, we will announce 3 winners of our voter registration initiative as well. So starting off, Arthur Greenlee IV is representing the Black Student Athlete Association. He's a 5th-year senior here at UC. His major is organizational leadership with a focus in human resources / talent development. He is also part of the men's track and field here team at UC. So round of applause for him. Miriam is a 3rd-year secondary English education major and a French minor at UC. When she isn't out liberating UC, she's usually taking a nap with her cat Olive. Round of applause for her as well. Next, we have Kish Richardson. Richardson is a senior studying philosophy and international affairs. He currently serves as the president of the United Black Student Association with plans of serving the Peace Corps post-graduation. And last but not least, we have Gerald Crosby is representing the Black Roundtable this year as the Annie Fitzgerald recipient. Gerald has worked closely with UC departments such as the University of Cincinnati Police Department, the Center for Community Engagement, African American Cultural Resource Center, Gen 1 House, and UC International. So we're going to start kicking off the questions for our panelists. So the first question was submitted by students. So to get everyone who's not aware of your personal work and your personal platforms, what issues have you seen on campus? What do you want to see at UC? And why do you do this work? So we'll start off with Miriam. Can you share a little bit about that?
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
So, I'm Miriam. I, like you said, I'm a 3rd-year English education major. So basically, this summer, I wanted to find a way to mobilize the UC campus area and the students who are around. I think that there are a lot of great things that happen on campus and around the campus community, and I wasn't seeing that being translated into like the greater like Cincinnati, like I guess Clifton area. So this summer, I got together with some other UC students, but also students from NKU and Ohio State and UK, and created a group called Cincinnati for Justice. And our main focus was to take the efforts that are happening on campus and mobilize them to students who maybe aren't too involved in campus activities or initiatives. And so a lot of the work I do is kind of outside UC, but sort of taking what people are already doing, not reinventing the wheel, and just facilitating in any way I can.
That is awesome. So next we have Arthur. If you'd like to speak on these points, I can repeat the question as well if you would like.
Repeat the question. Sorry about that. Let's make it so
you're good.
I answer everything.
Yeah. So question was, what are issues you've seen on campus? What do you want to see at UC? And why do you do this work?
Mm-hmm. All right, so first off, I would talk about the issues on campus. Personally, I feel like this. I'm speaking kind of from the athletic side of things. Is where that sometimes we are not interconnected and intertwined with the minorities and African American people off campus when it comes outside of athletics. So the reason why I kind of do this work. Oh, the reason why I kind of got into this and was part of the Black Student Athlete Association here was I was wanted to kind of bridge that gap between this a normal black student and also a black student athlete. And I want to make sure that we are intertwined with each other. Yeah, because I know as a normal black student, y'all go through a lot of different struggles than me as a black student athlete. Because sometimes I get kind of shielded away from everything just because I'm a student athlete here on campus. But I want to make sure that with this Black Student Athlete Association that we intertwine with our black students and be able to listen to them, give advice for them, and also be educated as well as with them and give some pointers of what they think can work as well, and just be able to really bridge that gap between the athletic department and then the normal black students on campus or minorities as well.
All right, thank you so much for that insight. Next, we have Gerald. Can you speak on these few points?
Mike, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was, what issues have you seen on campus? What do you want to see at UC, and why do you do this work?
Yeah. Speaking to the issues that I've seen on campus thus far, I think that we do a great job as an institution when it comes to speaking about diversity and inclusion and talking about empathy and all these coined social justice terms. But I think we can improve on how that looks in our realities, right? We have like these scenario or textbooks based scenarios about how racism looks or how microaggression looks, but it all looks different in many different ways. And I think if we got better at identifying them and having these real conversations about how that affects us on our everyday lives at UC, I think that would definitely take us to the right point or the right direction. As far as the work that I'm doing, kind of my goal or what I want to see from UC is all focused on this solution of being united, but also having these real conversations. Real conversations are tough. Real conversations are hard to have, but they're a necessity, I think, in order to create change. So that's talking about, if I had this experience at UC, speaking about that experience without feeling any guilt and trying to work with university or even peers to make a better environment for all of us.
Right, thank you so much. And last, we have Kish. So as president of UBSA and the center at large, you've come across many students with all different backgrounds. So we'd love to hear your perspective as well.
Alrighty, and my name is Kish. Currently, serving as the president of UBSA. I was a former senator at large within student government, but I think our panelists have kind of touched on the key issue, kind of like a big disconnect. So obviously, there are a lot of issues that students face on campus, whether that be transparency from administration or just holding those administrators accountable. But with the conversation focusing on racial equity, I think it's important to understand how communities, specifically communities of color, aren't included in these conversations. And I think the disconnect should be attributed to not really listening to these communities. So I think it's important to emphasize listening to somebody and just hearing them out. It's one thing, Mr. Crosby, he had an initiative. It's one thing to just hear somebody and to take into consideration what issues they may have, but to really listen to them and to include their perspectives into the conversation. And this kind of goes back to intent versus impact. You may have the best or the most well and pure intentions ever, but if those intentions aren't coming across to the people you are truly trying to affect, then what is the purpose? So I think one way that we can really try to start listening to communities who haven't been included in these conversations are collaborative processes. So if it is in student government or if an organization is having an initiative, make sure that we are taking that first step to listen to them and including them in those conversations. So listening is where I'll leave off at. Jordan, from you.
What about? Can you guys hear me now? Okay. All right. So thank you all for sharing. So the next question may seem a little basic, but I think it's all necessary for us to be reminded of what our collective duty is as Bearcats. So who should we be supporting and leading this work? Pretty simple question, but I think it needs to be answered, or people need to hear an articulate answer. So we can start off with Miriam again. Love to hear your answer.
Who should we be supporting and leading this work? Great question. I believe that one of my favorite quotes by Miss Angela Davis, there are many, but one of my favorite ones, she says, revolutionary hope lies precisely among those women who have been forgotten and abandoned by history. Personally, I identify as a womanist, a Black feminist. I believe in uplifting the voices of Black women and women of color and queer women, because when you look at history, women who fit those molds are ultimately, at the bottom of society. I believe that when you're talking about social racial justice, you, like, going back to what Kish said, you have to listen to the people who are most affected by it. I think that goes without saying. There are lots of nuances within that. Like for myself, I identify as a Black queer woman. However, I'm also light skinned, so my experiences as a Black woman are different from those of a darker skinned Black woman. And just listening to other people, but also keeping nuances in mind. That's what should be happening if you're going to be listening to those who are leading movements like this.
Absolutely. Thank you. So Kish, can you share on this topic as well?
I would also emphasize, Miss Miriam, when the protests in this past summer took place, I really did want to support Miss Miriam in her efforts. So I do want to uplift those voices that typically aren't really considered, if not appreciated. But it goes back to listening to those people who are crying or and trying to enact change on campus. So whether that be the families of those people who have been victimized of police brutality, whether those be the victims of any discrimination or any other injustices, making sure that their voices are at the forefront of the conversations should be a priority. I think when we consider like the Black Roundtable demands, these have been collaborative conversations to make sure that these people who have to deal with these issues can have a firsthand seat or a firsthand view as to what to expect. It's not enough to say we hear you. It's necessary to say, okay, we hear you now. What do you expect from us? And how can we ensure that you will be uplifted at the end? So making sure that the people who are ultimately afflicted are being supported, and how can we support them? Um, Dedicating your resources. Resources doesn't necessarily have to be time or money, or it doesn't necessarily have to be time, but it could be financial, it could be energy. Reaching out to individuals who are doing the work to say, hey, I have a couple of, I don't know, we had a winter clothes drive. Cincinnati for Justice had a winter clothes drive. So there's so many different ways that you could give your resources and, really help the cause. But it is incumbent upon us as individuals to look out and to seek out those opportunities. So it's not always going to fall in your lap. Not everybody's going to text you like, hey, can you do this? But if you truly do want to support people, take that initiative, because there are organizations and entities who have been doing the work both at UC and Cincinnati, and do the work that needs to be done.
All right, thank you. So Arthur, can you speak on this in terms of athletics and your perspective?
I feel like to kind of piggyback on what both of them talked about, it really is about us making sure we are being heard, but also making sure that we educate other people around us and other people in our community. And because it's sometimes hard to kind of try to tell somebody what's going on, without kind of writing them out for. I feel like that's big in order to plan out, be able to map out, be able to say, look, this, and this, and have a set document in front of them to show that they see that, look, we want change to happen. We need change to happen now, and we have action steps in order to make that happen. And in order to, I feel like that's huge in order to make sure we lay it out, because a lot of times we might want this stuff to happen. We might want things to go on a certain way, but we gotta make sure that we have an action plan in order for them to see, like, oh, y'all just saying a whole bunch of demands out of things like that. But being able to map it out and being able to really put it on paper, put it on pencil, put it down in a document is really huge, and that's something that just being able to do that is a huge aspect of it. And just being able to connect with the community. I know that's huge, and be able to just get out in the streets, get out to the people that normally don't see around the college campus, and then show them that they support it. We support y'all, and we fighting for y'all as well, because a lot of people some people think their voice kind of is small, but if we able to making sure we capitalize when we have our moments to go out into the community and making sure that and show them that their voice matters, their voice is being heard, and is being able to comfort them and be there for them.
All righty, thank you. So Gerald, can you speak on your work with the Black Roundtable? So who do you think should be supporting this work?
Yeah. Oh, I unmuted myself. Crazy. Who should be doing this work? I think everybody should be supported doing this work. Going back to MLK, one of his famous quote is, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And I think that we all bring in different perspectives. We all are doing very similar works, but we may not all agree on how to get to that solution. But I still think that every individual who's doing this work should be supported. And I think that the way that you get to change and the goal that we're trying to do is validating everybody's experiences. A lot of times, people are focused on fact. There are some people who are really good at getting down facts about things and presenting that and having that be like, their niche. And then some people are really good at just explaining their experiences. And some people might view that, as like not valid because they can't back it up with a statistic about why they feel this way. So with that being said, I think that it's important for all of us to support everybody that's trying to do this work and really trying to listen to these perspectives. We all have different identities, and each identity and each experience adds into us trying to create change. As far as the work of the Black Roundtable, Kish Richardson has been doing an amazing job with that, with creating demands and really trying to fight for that change. And a lot of that work has kind of been modeled after the IRA 8 and us trying to continue to pursue the change that's already been started, and just kind of not reinventing the wheel, but just doing it similar to what they did and using that support, using that research, and trying to advocate for things that we feel that we deserve. And a lot of times that's looked upon as radical, but I personally think that a lot of the acts that we have here at the university is kind of the bare minimum. So with that being said, I think people should educate themselves and really try to support as many people as they can.
Alrighty, thank you. So as we lead into the third question, I kind of want to build off the last one. So it's important for all of us to be transparent with each other and hold each other accountable. So have you been supported by other student organizations and leaders on campus? So we'll start with you, Gerald.
That's a loaded question for me, but I'm all about being honest, right? I think that I have been supported, but I am not the typical, I'm radical. I mean, being radical is a term that has been taken and ran with, but I believe that when you ask for something, when you should demand for things, the bare minimum you should get. And I think when I do some of this work, I get a lot of pushback because I'm radical. People don't like that. It doesn't always fit the agenda that some may have. So I think I have not always been supported. I do get pushed back for certain things, and people may not always agree with what I'm asking for. But in the hindsight, I'm learning to focus on allyship. I think that's a better mentality, motivating the middle, just going towards people who I think have similar understandings, who are actually willing to hear me out and willing to work with me to create that change. And I've had as many people I've had not supporting me, I've had maybe tenfold support me. So I always think it's really important to focus on your allyships.
All right, thank you. So move on to Kish. Can you share a little?
Of course. I like the word radical because a lot of the work that we are doing is not everyday work. This isn't easy. there is no one unilateral blueprint to, enacting social campus. So when you are doing these radical things, you have to address the root of the problems. If that So at the end of the day, the root of the problem is that these systems are built upon racist structures. So when you have to address these racist systems, they aren't comfortable conversations. So people aren't as inclined to conversations, but they are necessary nevertheless. So when we talk about doing the work, there are obviously organizations. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge how much they've supported these, whether that be from a repost to literally donating their time and energy. But I think the question is, to what extent are you supporting, and to what extent are you being genuine in your support? So at a certain point, this support does become performative, and I think it is incumbent upon individuals to hold themselves accountable. Like, if you want to black out your social media for a day, then do that, but also make sure that you were doing the legwork and you were making sure that the people who are being afflicted by these issues on a daily basis are okay. So I want to make sure that the support that is being given isn't performative. But obviously, that's not to say that everybody should be on the ground 24/7. Everyone has their priorities, but if we are asking for the support, make sure that you are genuine in what you do. And I think I'm forgetting the last part of the question, but I do want to acknowledge all the organizations who have promoted, supported, or just reached out to make sure that we are receiving the support that we have or we need. So yeah, there are organizations. I try to name a couple: Cincinnati for Justice, of course, but other small organizations who have come up with demands to issue to their respective colleges just so they can make some type of change, whether that be within DAP or CEAS. There are different organizations doing the legwork that we might not even know of, but making sure that it is genuine, I think, is the big point that I want to get out there.
All righty, thank you. And again, we ask that everyone mute their mics and turn off their cameras for this part of the town hall. Thank you. So next we have Miriam. Can you speak to your work both on and off campus in terms of this question?
Jordan, would you mind repeating the question for a little refresher?
You're on mute.
Okay. You hear me now? Okay. So yes. So have you been supported by other student orgs or leaders on campus?
So on June 2nd, this was after the first weekend of protests in the city for Mr. George Floyd. Like I sort of explained earlier, I was honestly sickened to be walking in Clifton, like around and on campus, and see people, sort of unbothered, but have, I guess, signs in their yard. Sort of going off what Kish said, it felt performative. The activism in Clifton UC area felt performative, in terms of what I was seeing. So I called some faculty who work at the African American Center, African American Cultural Resource Center on campus, and I told them, I was like, I think that someone should organize a protest around campus. And after that, I got in touch with Kish and other leaders on campus, and I really felt like it was the first time while being a student at UC where I felt like I could make a call to action and truly be supported. I think that oftentimes myself, at least before this summer, I used to think, what sort of impact can I do? It was really hard for me to imagine that. I'm sorry. Could you give me a refresher on the question?
Absolutely. So have you been supported by other student orgs and leaders on campus? So take your time, yeah.
Right. Okay. So after that, like I told you guys, Cincinnati for Justice was created, and we were able to also create a UC org called UC Allies. We had a professor reach out to us and say, I'm interested in helping mobilize UC students. What can we do? And so what Cincinnati for Justice was focused on this summer is education. We created three different systemic racism workshops throughout the city, and we would text in the group me to the UC Ally group and say, hey, we need this infographic made for this event, and people would be on it. You know, like I'm a leader. I'm a natural leader. However, leaders aren't skilled in everything. I think that if you as a leader see another leader trying to do something, supporting where you can and how you can really goes a long way. So yeah, I've definitely been supported by other leaders on campus, but also students who are leaders in their own ways. Like I said, there's no mono way of being a leader. Yeah.
All righty, thank you. So Arthur, can you end us off with this question? So again, so how have you been supported by other student organizations and leaders on campus?
So for the Black Student Athlete Association, this is something that kind of we came up with starting. I think our first meeting was like 3 weeks ago, like our first actual meeting. So we kind of knew all this. And I feel like we got flooded with a lot of different support from different organizations on campus and different people wanting to be involved in it. And it was something that was brought up with the Student Athlete Advisory Committee here on campus, and it was just like we have to do something. So then that's how kind of the Black Student Athlete came about, and they appointed me and Shannon Williams on the volleyball team with kind of like the leadership role of the Black Student Athlete Association. And it was just like I feel like we get a lot. I know a lot of people always want to kind of reach out to us to see what can they do, what can they help with advising, or what can they do in order to be a part of it. So I feel like we have got a lot of kind of people reaching out to us, different organizations. I always try to get involved with other organizations on campus and talk to other leaders as well. And I feel like we have had a lot of people being interested and people wanting to be involved in it.
Thank you all so much. Can you hear me? It keeps cutting in and out for me. Okay, awesome. So thank you again so much for your answers. Real quick, how are we looking on time, Harnor?
Yeah, we're looking great. Feel free to go ahead with the next question.
Awesome. Alrighty. As we take it home with this fourth question. So UC is a school that is connected with different communities by nature of its position in the city, as well as the programs we offer. How was your community work connecting to what you were doing on campus? So Miriam, we'll start you off with you.
So I study education. I was really blessed with an opportunity my sophomore year to work for a local organization called Breakthrough Cincinnati. I didn't know that I wanted to be a teacher before I did Breakthrough Cincinnati. We actually got our own classrooms on campus for the summer, and we were in Old Chem, so it was rough, but it was really fun. We got students together from Cincinnati Public Schools, and for a whole summer we were mentors, teachers to the 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. I learned a lot about community through this program. I learned that there are so many more there are so many there are so many different ways that the UC community and the Cincinnati community as a whole are interconnected. And as someone who studies education, it was honestly an honor to be able to facilitate these educational workshops this summer with the help of other UC students to talk about systemic racism in the city. That's my way of dismantling racism and white supremacy and sort of mobilizing underserved members of the community as through education. I think someone talked about that earlier on in the town hall. Toni Morrison says, if you have the ability to learn, turn that into teaching. And I have been blessed with many opportunities to take what I do and learn on campus and connect them to the greater Cincinnati community.
All right, thank you so much. So Gerald, will pass the question on to you.
Clarification is how my work connects to the community.
So yeah, so how is your community work connecting to what you're doing on campus? Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. So I have been extremely involved at UC. I founded 2 organizations since I've been here. We co-founded the Black Roundtable, and then also created UC Starface, which is a mentoring program where I work with Cincinnati youth, elementary kids, and it's a mentor program. So Monday and Friday we go there. Things are very sad this year because of COVID, but those have been a few things I've done to connect with the community, or being an at-large student for undergraduate student government and just advocating for freedom, I guess, in a sense, advocating for the necessities that we need as individuals. But that doesn't just adhere to, Black people or people of color, unity overall, and really trying to work to have a unified community. And that's kind of been one of my sole purposes and focuses. I would say that, again, to work within these organizations that I've been a part of have definitely given me the opportunity to create this change and to just talk with different people, to meet with different people, encourage different people, give multiple different perspectives. I actually had the opportunity to go to one of Miriam's marches she did over the summer this year, and kind of work with some of the other leaders on the panel to help create that change. So to that question, I think just working in many different aspects, trying to learn as much as I can and be as genuine as I can to do this work, I think has allowed me to help the Cincinnati community, but also help the campus community as well.
All right, thank you. Arthur, would you like to add anything?
So when it comes to that aspect of it, for me, the biggest thing that I was kind of the front runner for was the student athlete unity walk that happened last Thursday here on campus. And my main goal was to get out into the streets of Clifton, but due to coronavirus, things like that, we have to kind of dial back a little bit. But in order for that to happen, the biggest aspect and the biggest goal is that for me was to be able to once again to bridge that gap between us as student athletes and then us as students here on campus. And that was kind of my big goal when it came to the student athlete unity walk through campus. It was about catching the attention of everybody on campus and being able to show the students that we are with y'all as well. Don't think that since we are sheltered and we are kind of be sheltered in the Linder building and things like that, that we don't see what's going on and around us. And to show that, to get into the community, try to get into the through campus and walking through the campus and trying to engage with the other students was really big. And that was something that I was really passionate about because at the end of the day, I'm a Black man in America, and outside of when I dug up my track jersey on, I'm a Black man, and to be able to try to instill that into everybody and try to instill that into students as well, and also athletes, and just being able to kind of show them that look, man, we need to get out. We need to get out of our bubble. We need to get out of the bubble of just being a student athlete, and really get into the bubble of us making change in the environment around us. And that's something that I'm really adamant about, is just breaking out any bubbles, breaking out of anything, and just being able to stand as one and stand as united to make a change in this country.
All right, thank you. We'll ask Kish bring us on home.
Alrighty. And again, I'm just gonna echo a recurring theme that I've heard from the panelists is that these issues are so personal to all of us, whether it be from teaching and education from Miss Miriam or being or acting in like a mentorship capacity with Gerald. The issues that we are trying to make change on affect us because it's who we are. Our identities necessitate us doing the things that we are doing. And as far as how the work here at UC correlates with the work that we're doing in our community, it's personal for all of us because we are members of the UC community. And even if you don't want to identify as a Bearcat, this is so much more than University of Cincinnati. You might hear this a lot, but we are truly the university in Cincinnati, yet most of the times people identify UC with their immediate community. They think of gentrification or they're not really integrating with the community to the extent that they should be. So addressing that issue first, making sure that we are actually supporting the people who are supporting us. UC is one of the biggest, if not the biggest employer in Cincinnati. So how are we making sure that the people who are working to make sure that the next generation is prepared or adequately prepared, make sure that they have the resources that they need? I think that should be paramount. But the racial equity work that we are doing here at UC, whether that be making sure that the curriculum is diverse as it should be, or holding the people who have sworn to protect us accountable, that is very much going to translate into the real world. Again, both Miriam and I have worked with coalitions and organizations here in Cincy, and these conversations are so similar. So the work that we are doing here is very much foundational. And I hope, and I'm pretty sure the rest of the panelists hope to continue to build on the work that we are doing here. But this is just the beginning. I think I was talking to Jared about this, but the students here are literally the makers of tomorrow. So if we can't create a inclusiveness, or we can't create a culture where people feel that they are respected here at UC, then there is no way we're going to be able to do it in 5 years when we get out of here. So I think the work that we're doing here is very necessary, very foundational, and I'm excited to see where we go from here.
I think you're muted.
Hey, Jordan,
my
you're
friend.
muted.
How about now? Like I'm working off a hotspot or something. I don't know. I'm paying for Spectrum, but see what I'm getting. All right, now for the time everyone's been waiting for. It's the Q&A, so the crowd interaction with the panelists. So we'll go to Q&A till we hit around 5:55, 6 o'clock, at which point we'll announce the top 3 placers for the voter registration initiative. So I want to establish some ground rules. So we're not going to tolerate any disrespect of any sort. We ask that everyone please be respectful of the panelists. So they're being very vulnerable and honest, so they deserve your full participation. So either raise your hand or put an emoji or smiley face in the chat. So yeah, with that, yeah, kick it off. Somebody with a question, feel free to ask.
I think I see one.
Yes. Himanshu, you have a question for us? So you can turn on your camera and unmute your mic.
Gotcha. All right. So how you guys doing today? Thank you so much for sharing today. It was very impactful for me as well. So I wanted to ask you guys a question. So in your personal experience, how far have we actually come in promoting racial equity? And what are the next steps that you guys suggest society do to end racism as much as possible?
I can go ahead and start us off. I think that no matter how much work we have to do, personally, I've been challenging myself to stop saying racism or sexism and starting to name the systems that oppress us. So white supremacy. White supremacy is a global phenomenon, and that's what allows racism to continue. And say things like the patriarchy. That's what enables sexism to continue, and then you put the two together, white supremacist patriarchy is what holds me down as a black woman. So that's my idea of moving forward. No matter, someone else can speak to the progress we've made, but first step would be naming the systems that oppress people.
Thank you, Miriam. I 1,000% agree with that. In addition, I've had the wish to be mentored by like UC pioneer activists such as like Brittany Bibbs or Burt Jones or Andrew Nabbs, if anybody may know who they are. And when I was a freshman and being mentored and being taught about everything, I had an understanding that we had made so much progress as a university, or Sinahapa Talasi, who was a mentor for me through the SGMP program. But then as I got older and became, a leader in my own community, and I started to look at how things weren't better, it was just different. And that gave me a different perspective about where we need to go as a university, right? And we are still today. At this past summer, one of the baseball players, or two of the baseball players, signed a petition, to create change on campus. And there's just many different things that are still happening that I feel should have happened a long time ago. And I think as we still work to deconstruct these systems that are oppressing us, the systems that are creating more inequities, it's hard, but I do think that we will get there eventually. Like I said, I don't think things are a lot better. I think they're just different, but I do think that we are gradually getting better. And I say that because we are having these real conversations now, and I haven't seen that happen in a long time. So I think this is definitely a start.
For me personally, to say that we'll get there eventually, I personally don't believe that there is an eventually we should be aspiring towards. Again, just to emphasize what everybody has said, the work has been done, the demands have been issued. In 1968, Dwight Tillery issued demands to then President Langsam. From them, we see the African American Cultural Resource Center. Again, the petition this past summer to remove Marshot's name from the stadium. These are tangible or palpable advancements, but that's not to say that these inequities aren't going to just manifest themselves in very low-key ways. So how can we identify those ways, and how can we continue to make sure that the people who are supposed to address these issues and fix these issues are being held accountable? So never be complacent. There's always going to be work that needs to be done, but yeah, just make sure you're doing it.
For like my kind of chime on all three of they have said is that I would say that we are moving in the right direction, but a lot of stuff hasn't changed quite yet. It's just been how would I say it, kind of revamped. It's one of those things. It was like the stuff that's been happening, like happened back in the day and back in the 1920s and when slavery was happening, things like that. It's kind of coming back in the world span, where it's like we are at a point where like everything is kind of being video recorded now, and I just feel like that's something that's huge because now you can't be like, oh, I feel like I was being threatened in my own home, but now I can record you doing it. So now I just feel like now it's just more. The video is out there for people to see. And for the action steps in order to make change and make this coming to a better world, it is being able to sit down and have the conversation with people don't like the uncomfortable conversations, and being able to sit down, educate people on what is going on, why are we doing what we're doing, and being able to talk to them. But also you gotta be at the point where you gotta hear both sides of the story. I know sometimes a lot of people want to just spit out opinions on how they feel, things like that. But I feel like at the end of the day, in order for us to move forward as a country, is we have to sit down as both groups, talk the group, and kind of be like, look, I know I feel this certain way, and this is why I feel it. And then the other group says their opinions on it in order to make both sides feel comfortable. Because sometimes, I mean, so this is my opinion, but sometimes we got to make sure that both sides see the value in what is being said in order for that other side to be like, okay, I understand why you're doing what you're doing. And I understand the reason why you fight so hard for this and why you're so aggressive for this. So just being able to have both sides speak their opinion and both sides the kind of view of what's going on is important and is key. And I feel like that's something that could really impact change and will move this country forward.
Thank you so much for your guys' answers.
Thank you, Mashu, for your question. So next we have Kelly and Mia, and that should take us up to 55. So Kelly, if you're there,
I'm here. So like with the guess just like the racism and injustice that happen from, the day to day, how do you deal with the anger that you might feel when you see it happen firsthand, whether to you or to somebody else? Like how do you keep yourself from, stooping down to the level and not like lashing out, I guess?
I'm gonna try to start off with that because I think there are processes that you need to follow to enact change, and at institutions of higher education, specifically predominantly white institution, you get in very majority white professional spaces, so you do have to maintain your character, and it just can become frustrating when you have to decide whether or not you should be code switching or you should just maintain your integrity and just say it like it is. But at the end of the day, if you are genuinely intent on making change, then you will hold yourself to that higher standard. You will take the high road or whatever. Because I have been in positions in which people have just blatantly lied in front of bodies and just said stuff that wasn't true. So for me to just sit there and say this dude just lying, it's like, no, can we look at the facts? So understanding that there is a cause so much bigger than myself that I have to stay in order to truly make some gains. I think that's big, but I think sometimes you do need to call a spade with a spade and just call it out if you see it. I unfortunately haven't had, or I fortunately haven't had the opportunity to, identify like some overt, explicitly racist stuff. But even if you see some mundane microaggression, like, oh my gosh, you're being loud. Like I've literally had people say, why are you being so loud? Just because they were black. And it's like, no, you need to calm down. But no, yeah, sometimes you do need to call it out. But in the spaces that I am, I try to maintain that higher standard. But case scenario.
I want to just add to what Kish was saying as well. I taught myself when I first got to UC, because I'm coming from inner city Cleveland, Ohio. Higher education is not like how that is, but I taught myself how to talk the correct way, right? I taught myself how to code switch. I tried to articulate my words better to be heard, but it got to a point where I was just exhausted. I was in a Senate meeting and I wrote down everything I wanted to say. I said it perfectly and nobody heard me. And I just went home and cried. And I had that day, like literally I was just that down. And for me, during that moment, I realized that people need to see the real emotion. I need to be real. So at this point, I just express how I feel, I still try to be articulate and be conscious and be respectful. But I think that my emotion is what makes my story and my work so important. So I try to bring that with me in spaces. And even if that's not warranted, even if I'm angry, even if someone may disagree with it, it's real, and it's there. And I think that is what's helping me understand what creates change is that real raw emotion. And I try to bring that with me.
Yeah, sort of adding to that, I grew up in a high school in Cincinnati that was predominantly white. Being from a background that is African and Black, and being from a background that is American and white, I feel like I've been given a lot of perspective on other people's BS. So throughout my time at this high school, I didn't have a lot of friends because I spoke how I felt. I told people what was up, and people didn't like that, right? But in a lot of ways, people respected me. People respected the fact that I stood on what I believe in 10 toes, to the point where it did affect my high school experience. Because at the end of the day, if I'm not being honest about my experience and about how that makes me feel, I'm living a faux life. I can sit at the table with all the popular people, but at the end of the day, it's fake, because when I leave that table, I'm still experiencing the same things I'm experiencing. The only difference is it's internalized. So I guess in a way, I've almost had a privilege to be able to, not care what people think, because I did it so early on, that I got kind of used to not having a lot of friends. But on that same token, when you stand on what you believe in 10 toes, and maybe that includes anger, controlled anger, you don't want to project on people, but when you stand on what you believe in 10 toes, the people who are supposed to be in your life will come around. You will attract people who respect that and who want the same thing you do. You will attract people who see your anger as a catalyst for change and not just anger, because that's what it is. It's a catalyst for change. That's what any emotion is. So my personal way of going about that is, I don't really care if people like me or not. I'm gonna do it anyway.
That was, ooh. All right. So for me, when it comes to when I see it, 'cause I see it, but I'm like one of those people who would be like, all right, so if I feel some type of way, this is the first thing I do. First thing I do is be like, do they really know what they saying? And then I think about it, and I go in my room and I be like, all right, listen, sit down, don't tweet anything out, don't put anything on Instagram quite yet. So I'm gonna write it in my notepad and I'm just gonna wait. And then after that, I let it simmer a little bit, and I'll be like, oh, I saw this, they said this about me, they said this about my country or my race. And then I sit there and I wonder, and I'll be like, is me putting out this tweet, me putting out this post, how much impact or effect that's gonna have? And if I think about it, if I'll be like, oh, I'll put this out and it really ain't gonna have no impact or effect, then I should dial back and be like, look, all right, I know you want to say this, I know you want to get this out, I know you want to get this point across, but you don't really need that. That's not nothing gonna be beneficial to them. And that's what kind of I sit down and then the second thing is I do is where if I want to say something, I first say it to I call my mom or call my brother and I be like, look, this person said off the wall crazy thing to me. And I talk to them about it, then my mom would like me calm me down. She'd be like, all right, you don't gotta go off on this. They may not know. So then I'd be like, boom, all right, they may not know. So then I go back to my room, I'm like, all right, bet. So now I'm gonna educate them. So now I'm gonna give them a little note and I'm gonna tell them, look, I know you feel this type of way, but this is why you shouldn't feel that way. So I feel like really being able to step back, because I know sometimes it's hard to hold your emotion, but sometimes you do gotta hold those emotions in, because sometimes if you blurt out or you blurt out what you thinking in your head, that might not actually affect change, but it might just put fuel on the fire, if you understand what I'm saying. But being able to step back and be like, all right, I know they said this, I know they said that about me, but in order to just kind of step back, take a calm breath and be like, look, they might not be educated enough yet, so I'm going to educate them. So I feel like that's one thing, is just being able to step back and just write it on a notepad. And then if you feel like it's something that will be beneficial to the community, beneficial to them, let them know, but let them know in a way that making sure you educate them.
All right. Thank you so much, Kelly, for your questions, and your panelists for your answers. We're getting kind of close on time, but I want to hear these questions. Should we do a little speed round, a little bonus round or something? Mia, if you would like to pop up and ask the question really quickly, and then Natalie, we may not have time to get to yours, so you can drop it in the chat, and I'll make sure it gets to our panelists and your question gets answered. But yeah, go ahead, Mia.
Okay. Hi, my name is Mia. I'm a first year. So I'm coming, like you said, Miriam, from a predominantly white high school. And a lot of what I did in high school, I did a lot of activism. I founded the BSU. I did stuff in the community with the police department. I worked at City Hall. So I was just like all up in my community, fighting very hard to dismantle racism, discrimination, sexism. And so obviously with all of that like involvement, I've experienced burnout very, very like often. So my question is kind of two parts. I know you said keep it short, but we'll see. But so the first part is, how do you determine like what to get involved in, when to spend your time, to like giving your time to an organization, your resources to an organization, and when to say, okay, this is not something I'm able to do. And then at the same time, like, do you have any suggestions? I've written down a lot of the organizations you've talked about, but do you have any specific suggestions on organizations to get involved in this year at UC?
I can speak to the first part of your question. I'm so glad you brought up burnout. It's definitely real. This summer I was on the verge of burnout. I can hear Kish like in the back of my head saying, "Miss Miriam, if you need to take a break, take a break." It's really hard to do that when you're passionate, right? I think that what helped me sort of take a step back and take a break is remember that this work is here, and I can do as much as I can, and then I can pass it on, and take a step back, because people are going to want to be doing the work, and it doesn't always have to be you, and you can always come back to it, but if you burn out before you're really honestly able to accomplish the things you want to accomplish within that issue, at the end of the day, you're compromising a lot more than you should. And that's something I'm really learning to learn. So thank you for sharing that. And I hope you find a way to, slow down and put Mia first.
Yeah. Always make sure it's a marathon, not a race. The work will be there. So if you ever feel like your sanity, your peace of mind is always crucial, because if you don't have your own peace of mind, you can't really help anybody else achieve that own peace of mind. So you know what you can handle. It is a marathon, not a race, but yeah, that's my little quote.
I just wanted to add, Kish, you just said everything I wanted to say. But as far as organizations you can get a part involved in, there is NAACP. I don't know if we mentioned that or not. There is student government. The president, I think, just left. We have information for that. There is UBSA. There's UCASA. There's many different organizations. I recommend just hitting any of us up. We're more than willing to help you connect to these organizations. But also I wanted to say, only come back when you're ready. This is a weird time. The work will be there, unfortunately. So, and when you do come back, you don't have to be in part of everything. That was one of my biggest mistakes. I did everything and I burnt out really bad. So I just think continue to pace yourself, and yeah, just hit us up if you have any questions about any organizations.
All right. I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much, panelists and audience member, for your questions. This was an excellent discussion. So now I'm going to pass it off to Harnoor to announce the winners.
Yeah, thank you. This was fantastic. Thank you so much to our panelists. It takes a lot of strength, a lot of work for people to lead with your identities. So my name's Harnoor. I'm a part of SAB's external committee, or the event planning committee. This event was intended to be an introductory organizing space. So like Kish and Miriam and Gerald and Arthur have echoed, for us to see the change that we want on campus, there has to be a huge push from all of us, initiative that nobody else can just grant. So that being said, if you or your organization are interested in working with these students or these orgs, UBSA, UC Allies, Cincinnati for Justice, Black Roundtable, Black Student Athletes Association, and pushing for reform on campus, please email us at the link that we just dropped in the chat. So with that, I will get into the voter registration initiative winners. So after I announce, if any of our org members are here, please unmute yourself, turn on your video, so we can recognize you and hear your speech. No, I'm just kidding, but a couple of words would be nice. So in first place, if we can get like a little drum roll from our panelists, because you are the only ones that we can see, we have Midwest Thamaka. Do we have any members of Midwest Thamaka here? You have won $200 to use towards materials for your organization, and you will also be recognized at our celebration of student involvement. All right, so that's all right. Doesn't look like we have anyone from Midwest here.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I was looking to see because
you better claim it.
one of our co-directors was here, but I think she had to leave. But yeah, I'm on registration for it, and we thank you so much for this great prize. We are going to use it towards a scholarship for an artist in the Elements group in OTR. So thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Okay, and in second place, we have GlobeMed at UC winning $100 to use towards the organization, and another mention at CSI. So is anyone from GlobeMed at UC here?
I can speak for GlobeMed. Just like, thank you so much for this prize. We're probably going to donate it to our partner organization that works in Thailand that helps our Burmese migrants. So this is an awesome prize. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you are welcome. Thank you for attending. And last not least, we have UC Dance to Enhance winning $50 and another mention at CSI. I love the energy, Miriam. So I don't think anyone from UC Dance to Enhance is here. That's all right. So we'll be reaching out to these 3 organizations later and connecting. Again, if any of you are interested in working with the orgs that our panelists are a part of, please email us and we will connect you appropriately. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes to answer questions if any of our panelists want to. For the people who weren't able to have their questions answered, we'll be here. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending. We'll be sending out a post form. And actually, if in the chat before you leave, you could drop 1 plus and 1 minus, and then something you learned. That would be awesome. Thank you.